past few years in real estate have been pretty wild with competition. Sellers want to sell, but they oftentimes don't have anywhere to go. In comes the perfect solution, the rent back. We are always telling sellers to consider a rent back over waiting to sell their home until they have found their perfect next home. You can never anticipate when that would be, and oftentimes sellers need the equity from the home that they're in order to purchase the next property. So what we can do is we often put the house on the market during the best market time. In Minnesota, it's late winter, early spring. Buyers get feverish, and you typically get the best price and terms during that market. Now, if you don't have a property to move into, we list your home and we tell the market that we are interested in a rent back. Here is kind of the mutual understanding of a rent back. This can be applicable to both buyers and sellers. A rent back is where you close on the property and then the seller rents the property at a specific rate from the buyer for a certain amount of time. Here are some nuances. This is really great for sellers. It buys them time to find a new property and hopefully avoids having them move twice. For buyers, especially buyers that aren't on a timeline, this is a great competitive term. You can offer a rent back for free if you want to, if it's highly competitive, or else you can charge them the cost of your mortgage or slightly more in order for them to stay in the property, yet you have secured the property beating out the competition because you gave the sellers a term that they really needed. Rent backs do have some other details. Buyers typically cannot rent it back for more than 60 days if they are getting a mortgage on the property. Most lenders want to see you occupying the home that you purchased as a primary residence within 60 days of signing the mortgage paperwork. So you're going to have to set up your dates specifically for that. Let's put an example out there. A seller decides to list their home in mid-April, but they feel like they might need until end of July or even end of August in order to find their new property. So we write an offer on April 15th and we decide, let's have it close on June 15th, 60 days out. And then we would like to rent back mid-August to hit that 60-day marker. And both buyer and seller are protected. Alternatively, we often tell sellers, hey, you generally don't need to even buy that much time. You just need to buy enough time. And what you really want is that assurance that your buyer is going to close. And so if you list on April 15th, let's try to close as soon as possible. Let's close by May 15th. And then we'll write a rent back until July 15th, and you have 2 months to go find a new property. Most of the time, that's plenty of time for you to find a new place. The only other detail that we want to tell people to remember is that a rent back is an insurance policy. This is seller specific. You are going to determine upfront how long you need that rent back to be, and you're going to negotiate it upfront. If you happen to find your new home very quickly and you don't even need the rent back, you often still have to pay the fee. You might get lucky that your buyer gets excited and says, hey, let's just cancel the rent back. We don't need it anymore, or we're fine terminating it early. But most of the time, the fee is an insurance policy to help avoid having you move twice. So that's something you have to get a little bit comfortable with. You're going to want to remember that we negotiate the rate up front, and it is typically a lump sum that is paid on closing day from the seller to the buyer. Often it's coming out of proceeds, sometimes it's a separate check, but it's a lump sum. It is not a monthly rate. The rent back creates a lease agreement similar to that of a landlord and a tenant, but often the seller is maintaining most responsibilities of the property, including light maintenance, light bulb changes, etc. If there were any major repairs that were required, something that required an insurance company, that would then fall on the buyer because they now own the property. Lastly, there's typically a deposit. There's often a deposit even if you are highly competitive or very generous and offering a rent back for free, we still would include a deposit. That way, if there were any damages, you would be able to, as the buyer, retain the deposit in order to take care of those damages. That deposit will be held by the buyer and then it will be returned to the seller per the terms of landlord-tenant agreements in your state. Minnesota has to be returned within 21 business days. At the end of the day, rentbacks are amazing tools. We highly recommend that you look into them as a seller or that you consider them as a great add-on to your offer as a buyer. Your agent should be able to explain how rentbacks work in your area. Our team is based in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and we would love to help you write your purchase agreements, find your perfect home, and negotiate any rentbacks if needed. We're here to help. Reach out.